Good evening. Tonight we celebrate the beginning of Rosh Hashanah 5781, a brand new Jewish year, and the end of a year that I think many of us are glad has finished. We don't know yet what the new year might bring, but as we do at this time every year, we pray for health, prosperity, happiness, for joyful occasions in our lives, and for those near and dear to us. This last year has been very, very odd for many of us, hasn't it? It's been like, for many people, so many words have been written, so much has been said about how lives have been on hold, disrupted, derailed. But let's not forget that good things have been happening as well. And I want to talk tonight about one of those things. With everything that's going on around us and the disruption in our own lives, it might be easy to miss some of the bigger stories in the news around the world. And this one deserves a lot of attention from us as Jews. In recent weeks, as you may have heard, Israel has signed peace treaties with both the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, two Arab countries who have technically been at war with Israel since 1948, since its establishment. A brief recap: the first Arab country to make peace with Israel was Egypt in 1979. For that to happen, it took the president of Egypt to physically visit Israel and go to the Knesset and speak to demonstrate his goodwill and break down barriers to be able to create a peace treaty. Once that peace treaty was in effect, it made it possible not only to establish diplomatic and trade relations, but for Egyptians to go to Israel as tourists, for Israelis to go to trips to Egypt as tourists, something that hadn't happened from 1948 to 1980. It was then another 14 years, 1994, for Jordan to sign a peace treaty with Israel. Well, from 1994 to now is 26 years. That's a quarter of a century. And in the last few weeks, two Arab countries have added their names to that list. The number of Arab countries that is now at peace with Israel, think about it, has just doubled. Now, this is going to mean more trade relations, diplomatic relations, and so on. And I want to tell you a little story that might help to put this in more concrete terms for everybody. The first time I visited Israel was 1989. My sister had made Aliyah 5 years earlier, and she was raising a family. At that point, she had her first 4 children. 2 more would follow later, but at that point, she had 4 children, all under the age of 5. I took a plane from Brisbane. I don't remember exactly what legs we were on, but at some point, one of the planes on my itinerary had to make an unscheduled fueling stop in Dubai, which is one of the 7 small Arab states that make up the United Arab Emirates. I wasn't the only person on that flight that was headed for Israel. There was another passenger, an Israeli man traveling on an Israeli passport, who had booked that flight knowing that it was not scheduled to stop in an Arab country. When he learnt that we were putting down in Dubai, he became frantic. He told the flight attendants that there was no way he was stepping foot off the aircraft. He believed that if he set foot off the aircraft onto the soil of Dubai, he would never get back on the aircraft, he would never get home. He was literally in fear of his life. That was over 30 years ago. In very recent times, the last year or two, in the lead up to this peace agreement that has just been made public and signed, Israeli officials and representatives have been traveling to the United Arab Emirates and presumably also to Bahrain. They've been opening the path for peace to occur. There's been a dialogue between these two Arab countries and Israel, which led to the good news that was announced very recently. I'm not a deep analyst of the Middle East situation. I don't know what this might mean in terms of other countries following suit or how soon that might happen. But I can be very, very hopeful that it will. And I think in a world that this year particularly has been so troubled for so many people by this pandemic, the fact that we have such a hopeful event in the life of Israel is something of real shining light for us to take joy and focus on this Rosh Hashanah. Now, in our own lives, very few of us have the opportunity to operate on the world stage in the way that the peacemakers in Israel, Bahrain and the UAE and their counterparts in America that smoothed over some of it. Very few of us will ever be involved in anything like that. But we can be agents of peace and joy and productivity and prosperity in our own lives. We interact with people on a regular basis, even when we're staying home and avoiding going out in public too much due to the current situation. We still interact with people. We still find ways to be involved in other people's lives. And things happen and opportunities arise. And we can all be peacemakers. We can all find situations which may have gone on for 30 years or longer and find ways to resolve those so that we can move forwards with peace and happiness and joy. Each of us has something in our lives that we want to fix. And perhaps now, when our lives, for many of us, have been forced to slow down for the last few months and probably many more months to come, unfortunately, perhaps this coming year, the new year we're celebrating tonight, is an opportunity for us to find those things that we haven't fixed, that we know we need to fix, that we would like to fix, that we should fix. Those broken or bent relationships, those parts of ourselves that we know aren't quite right and we've neglected. I'll give you a simple example. I know I need to exercise more. Simple thing. If I did it, it would make a big difference. It's something about myself that I ought to fix. Maybe this new year, 5781, is the year that we get to do that. I hope that this will, in every way possible, be a very good year for each and every one of you. Hashanah Tova u'Metuka, and Shabbat Shalom.